Hey, it's Chris and Jodette. We're taking a break from the studio and we're headed to Binders to see our friend Howard at an incredible art store in Atlanta, Binders Art Supply. We're going to do a couple product reviews, see what happens.
The first thing I'm looking at is my price. It's my budget. Is this for my kids that I'm, they're going to draw on and throw away, and I might save a few pieces. Typically, a sketch paper is something that is less expensive. And then the drawing can be more expensive. It's a little higher quality. It also could be a little more archival. The next thing that happens is whether it's recycled paper or not. But that's something to think about, because anything in a pad is made from a tree. So typically if it's on a binder, there's only a few times when it's not made from a tree. That means there's acid in it and it's going to yellow. So think of it as a sketch instead of a formal drawing. A formal drawing is where you're going to buy individual sheets and they're sold in a different part of the store. So this is really for things that you're working out your ideas, you're playing with, you're, just kind of, you want to go to Starbucks and sit and chat. So what would be the next thing to do? So the reason for the size difference is this going to be in my purse and I'm at Starbucks and I just want to sketch? And at what point and at what size do I want to bring it? That brings a whole new problem, so to speak. If this is the sketch pad you're putting in your purse to take to Starbucks, I would look at whether it's 50 sheets or 100 sheets. Because the 100 sheets is going to take up a lot more space, and the whole point of this was to be functional and go with you. And if it's too big, you don't want to take it. But if it's a sketchbook, you keep it home. So you really have to think about, where am I going with these sketches and what am I doing with it? The next thing that happens, from company to company, the 3-ring binders work nicely because it lies flat when you use it. But if you have a book, now it really becomes more of a journal. It has a different look. I don't typically use the hard binder to draw with when I'm sketching with. This is just like literally a journal, a personal thing of going through my life, and I'm sketching with it. I do like these little books though. I do a lot of things where I read a book and I draw with it. It's almost like, instead of taking notes, I actually have sketches of the books I've read. I do that with scripture too, as well. Papers are going to come in different textures. The coarseness of the paper is going to change how dark the color goes. So if the texture, there's a weave on the texture and it grabs the pencil, the stronger the weave, the more it grabs the pencil, the darker it is. So if the paper is smooth, it doesn't grab as much, then the picture is not going to be as dark. So you have to watch your texture, and it's very hard to tell the texture. You almost have to feel it, and then you say, okay, and you have to experiment. Do I like this texture? And so from paper to paper, you're going to get different textures. And then the next thing that happens is, whether it's multimedia or not, anything that says multimedia, and they're over here, mixed media. Mixed media papers are meant to take other things like pen and ink, pencil and charcoal. So what does that mean when it's mixed media? Well, you do have to check what they're saying on the back. There is no instruction on this one in particular, but typically mixed media means that you can use a little bit of pen and ink and a little bit of watercolor, but not a lot. If you're doing a full-blown out watercolor, these pads are not made for that. They're meant for you to do 90% of the drawing and 1% little bit of color. Otherwise, they buckle too much. And there'll be different mixed medias, and you have to be real careful with the mixed medias, because some of them say water and some of them do not. The other thing you start to see are toned papers. So the different toned papers that are available, whether it's in gray or in brown. So the purpose of a toned paper in the sketches, and you have to be careful with the toned papers also now. So the toned papers tend to be really smooth when they're sold in a pad like this, unless it's accompanied by me tints. Canson. And it might be in a different section of the store. So what happens with the toned paper, this one feels too smooth and it doesn't have the texture that I need for it to grab the charcoal. So this would be, the Strathmore toned paper would be really something you're going to use with pencil and not charcoal. Now, you probably could get away with a little white charcoal in a few places, and you can see it here, the white charcoal, but it's going to have trouble even on the cover because I can feel the texture being too smooth for you to use charcoal. So it would be a pencil and a white charcoal. And that's a great combo. I have a portrait of President Carter praying that's on something very similar to this. In fact, it might be the same paper. You know, there's actually a history with the toned paper. Leonardo da Vinci is the first one to take this paper and tone it and make it what we call a medium tone. And that medium tone, he would then shade his values darker and darker, and they would disappear into the paper. And for the first time, art wasn't outlined. And this sfumato is the term that the Italians used. And people also called Leonardo's thing as Leonardo's smoke, as like a haziness and disappearing. So it's not often you're going to see something stamped out that you can see the whole shape against the background. Typically, this is made for you to blend and let it disappear into the background. But the origination of it is with Leonardo. The French Academy later on does something called the drawing rule. The dark on the light becomes the light on the medium. So if your paper is here, the dark on the light side would be the paper, and the light on the dark on the light side is the paper, and then the light on the dark side would be the paper, and that harmonizes. So gray and toned papers are fantastic. For me, they're really about sketches. Anytime I have a pad, whether it's a drawing pad or a sketch, I typically don't do high-end nice drawings on a pad. I'm going to grab the individual sheets that only an art store like we're in Binders right now, only right now, Binders is going to carry these pads, these professional papers. Everyone carries the pad, but keep in mind, the pad has a limited use. The word sketch means you're just playing. It's just a sketch. You're working out ideas. So Jodette, why do you like which pads and papers and any of your favorites? What do you look for?
The papers, mainly the sketchbooks and drawing books are helpful for kids. So I teach kids classes. I like the drawing pads and either the green or the brown. And you like the yellow now, don't you?
The green is recycled paper and the brown is not. They're both a medium texture surface. So you think of it as an ironing the paper for this.
The green is what we usually use, and it doesn't matter to me. It really matters what you want to use. The texture and whether it does come with a spiral bound on it, so that's good. You know, you can use the spiral bound and turn your pages over like this. I like to turn my pages over. So books that don't have the spiral bound, they're hard to use, hard for the kids to use, but it also takes up a lot of space. So these are
Don't you think the covers come off? Don't you think it starts to separate and the covers come off after a while?
Yeah, the paper comes out of it eventually if it's bound like this, like if it's book bound. So it opens like this, which is nice, but then
it's already separating.
You're just using one sheet of paper at a time. Mm-hmm. So
this is something new I've never seen. I really like this. With this,
I do too.
For the first time ever, they're doing what we call a block. So in watercolor, they have this like black tar or rubber goes all the way around it, and you cut it out. And this is the first time I've seen this on a product, and that would be, because you can see how this is already starting to separate. Well, we don't care about this. We just care about the pages separating. So now we would just take it off one at a time. I think this is very nicely done. And for the first time, I'm thinking, wow, I might reconsider not doing a binder and doing a black like this or the block like this?
It depends on what it is.
Yeah, it really does, because I don't think this is the kind of pad you take to Starbucks. This is a studio pad where you do the drawing, you finish the drawing, and then you remove it, and now you do the next drawing.
Exactly.
So there's a big difference between the spiral and the bound.
Did you take that to Italy with you?
No. Well, that came out pretty quick for both of us. No, we
that
would
did
take.
come out
Yeah.
very fast
Yeah.
because you're going to keep your things intact,
I took this to Italy.
and the spiral bound keeps it intact. But
Earlier, I was saying how the 50 sheet and the 100 for travel. So if I'm taking something, I'm not going to do 50 drawings in 10 days in Italy. So the 50 sheet makes more sense for this size. This is a size that it doesn't make sense for me, but this really does, and I love that.
yes, and I like the sketchbooks. The sketchbooks are great. So if you're going to Italy or you're going to a foreign country or something, you might want a smaller sketchbook. But for drawing,
That's multimedia, isn't it?
multimedia.
You've done watercolor on those.
Yes, on these. But these are good for kids. And if you want to keep your work, you keep it in a spiral bound notebook. And so the small ones are good. There's a book bound and a spiral bound.
Well, you know what makes this
So-
different for me, though, is this. When I have a journal like this, just say I took it to Italy, and I have this journal, and I've taken this, and I've done my drawing. My third drawing is horrible. I feel like I ruined my book. But with the spiral bound, I'm already getting rid of it. I can rip it out, and I haven't ruined my journal. I know it's funny games, I have to play with my head, but it has to be fun. And if I'm so worried about the drawing, then drawing outside's not fun. So your travel thing, I think we both agree, should be, or strongly consider a spiral bound.
A spiral bound for traveling.
Yeah, for travel.
And for keeping your work in something. I like the size 9x12. So for me, for kids' classes, the 9x12 works really well, and it's spiral bound.
Why do you like the 9x12? If it gets too big, is it too hard, too long?
Yes, and it takes up too much space. So I can turn this over, and it doesn't take as much space as what on the table space.
Oh.
So you're looking at table space, and you're saying, oh, well, what can I fit on a table? Well, when you've got the book bound, you have to leave it open. So the book bound, you leave open like this, and then the pages don't turn as easily, and they come out also eventually. Now,
Yeah.
the spiral bound also comes out, but I like the spiral bound. I usually take, with the kids' classes, I will take the fishing wire, fishing line, the nylon fishing line, and just get the kids the very first day for their sketchbooks to take and tie this in the back right here, and to secure it. It's right back here. But the spiral bound will fall apart eventually at some point, but it's better because you can reinforce.
So you're saying
back.
right here where there's a
Right
lip,
there.
you're closing it. I
Yes.
see. You're
So
sealing this
right
closed
here-
with fishing line, and then you're going to the next line and
Right.
the next line.
And I'm connecting this
I
part
see.
to this part right here.
Someone should
And
talk to
then-
this company.
And then come all the way down and tie knots on both ends, and that helps
Because
to
your kids
keep
use
it forever.
well, your kids keep using the spiral bound for the whole year.
Right. And they can fall apart, but I do like them better because you can reinforce it, you can stay with it, and it takes up less table space.